hands up. Do you think booking flights is easier than it was 10 years ago? Yes? It's easy? Easier? Easier, wow. That's the end of the panel.
Let's go.
We don't need to talk anymore. They say it's easy. But I'm sure it can be improved, right?
Yeah.
What is your answer? Easier or harder? Adeline, you're the customer here.
Well, I think it's a lot bit easier, and I think I also allow the room we can improve. So ideally, the booking experience will be something we do not feel we are going through some process with your maybe AI agent, assistants. And I think, because the AI innovation is so fast, right? So I think we will be there in the coming 3, 4, 5 years. But another key factor is, the transportation data, and especially the flight booking data, should be and will be better organized and standardized. So the experience can connect the AI or whatever, the model, connect to the mass of data globally. So this is my idea.
You can tell that Kelvin is the engineer, right? He's already like, let's get stuck in. Let's fix the problem, Okay. Let me go to Adeline, because she is the customer, right? And so you started your career in Japan Airlines, then you went into corporate travel with American Express, and now you support MSD for all its travel and meeting needs across Japan, China, and Asia Pacific. Right. So has booking flights for corporates become more complicated? How does it hit travelers?
Yeah, so ease of booking, right, in our day-to-day world may have become easier, but in the corporate space, I believe with the plethora of choice, it's actually become more complicated in terms of making the right choices based on what you want as a corporate. And every corporate is different, but what we see is that now everybody thinks that they are a corporate travel expert. And that comes with its challenges, right? Because people will come and challenge you every day that, you know what, my corporate fare is not good enough. I can get this off something else, I'm seeing this, I'm putting it into AI. Where's the cheapest flight, right? And then suddenly they have an answer and they're like, you're not doing a good enough job because, why is my corporate fare not this way? So then having to explain all the dynamics about how the user experience in the leisure side, right? And again, the way the same person has a very different behavioral pattern when they're booking a flight for themselves, for their holiday, and when they are booking something for their business trip. And many a times, they don't even do the booking themselves. They have an assistant who goes in and does the booking for them. So you have this very interesting group of people called the travel arrangers, right, who are in a whole different world of their own because they have a network of sharing and a way of doing things that could be very, very different from the traveler themselves. And I believe different industries really have different way of tackling it. I think if you go to a tech company, right, their travelers are much more savvy. Everybody will do their self-service very well. But I'm from a pharmaceutical. So in the pharmaceutical space, I believe we are still kind of expectations-wise, 2 steps behind. Also, we not only deal with our own travelers, we also have to deal with a group of people known as the doctors. So most of our travel is for booking travel for doctors. And how do we do this book on behalf type of concept is also extremely interesting. And I think some of the questions that we'll talk about today, right? Because
are doctors very demanding?
I think depending on where in Asia Pacific, I believe in some cultures, doctors are still considered up there. I don't know if you've ever heard of the saying that to most Asian cultures, you would have made it in life if one of your kids was either a lawyer or a doctor.
Absolutely.
So there's still that saying, right? So, the standing of a doctor in society, right, and how we are expected to treat them. I believe culturally in our region, there's still a lot of that. So definitely when we organize their travel, we have to be very, very careful.
All right. So life for corporate travel has become more complicated. So Philip, you were working on a flight distribution startup called Everbread when I met, and then you went to Skyscanner, and now OAG. You got a bird's eye view, right, on all this flight data. What is the single biggest pain point now for the customer today? What is the data telling you?
So first, I don't have 80 slides, and I'll slow down a little bit. Everbreadth was a pricing engine on the back end, and then Skyscanner consumer side, I hope you'll use it at one point and still use it. OAG is more about the data. So what is the biggest pain point that I see right now is that I think it's become easier to find and book flights that could be very fast, especially if you fly with the same airline. I still find it consistently disappointing that if something happens during travel, it is incredibly difficult to change your flight, to react on the spot, to just decide, hey, listen, I'm going to take the later flight. I think as an industry, we need to share a lot more of the standards, to Kelvin's point. And I think it needs to be a lot easier for us when disruption happens to handle it. I think the way we find our flights over time, whether that's through LLMs and ChatGPT or Gemini, or there's going to be an even better product coming in the future, this will get marginally better. But the biggest change, the biggest differential is, can we make sure that when disruption happens, we improve that? And
so moment of truth is when disruption happens, can you solve it for that customer instantaneously?
If we imagine a world where, for example, my flight is canceled or delayed, or my calendar has switched, and it can assume that I need to stay for that meeting or dinner or whatever the case is, it automatically suggests and say, I found you another flight. Would you like me to do it for you? Right. And then you just simply say yes. I think that's the moment when I'll say, okay, flight booking experience is amazing.
Okay, and Kelvin, I mean, you've identified fragmentation of air content, right, as like the biggest pain point, and you see your mission as trying to unify this fragmented content to make it better for somebody like Adeline, right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. How does solving that make it better for the end traveler?
Well, I think fragmentation is a fact we cannot change. It's across all the sector of the travel industry. I think especially for flight distribution sector, it's not for what and why. It's just about how we handle that increasing complexity behind the changes, right? Because we are doing the global flight aggregation. What we see is it's just on the time that shifting from the very centralized GDS, dominate for 50 years, right? And recently, 10 years, NDC, direct, LCCs, all the stuff that happens. Well, just imagine that hundreds of airlines, if they establish their own API, what will happen, right? It's only get amplified and chaotic, right? Maybe, yeah.
Can I jump in? Can I interrupt here? What do you think about Charlene's statement that the technology is there? Because you were saying something completely different. You were saying, well, it's a mess, and like we're still dealing with it. And then Charlene, to credit to her, she said, well, the technology is there to have personalized pricing, but the consumer is not ready. Yeah. So where do you stand on this?
Yeah, I think the same, because sometimes the personalization or diversify also means simplicity. So sometimes it's all about how we handle that, right?
Okay, maybe we should throw it to Lisa. I mean, you were with eTravelLife for years and years, and now maybe you're freer to talk about this, talk about this now.
Everything that's broken. Maybe a couple of things. On the point around pricing and personalization, I really don't believe in that as far as airlines are concerned. I almost think it's somewhat unethical. You can have different classes of offerings and different, let's say, fares, but the user can actually select what they want to book themselves into, right? Receiving a different price simply because I've been on a site more than once, I don't think that's fair, right? I actually do believe it makes more sense to be rewarded for the amount of travel that you do, but that's something different that comes after the flight pricing you'll see on a site.
To your point, though, if you remember Orbitz, that company that existed a few years ago, they actually showed a different price if you were coming through an iPhone, because presumably you made more money, like that's more affluent passengers versus everyone else, and there was a massive backlash against this. So absolutely with you. I also don't agree that this is happening right now.
But so maybe let's ask Adeline that question. Do you believe in that?
Well, fundamentally, if you want to go with the concept of using algorithms to decide what people are paying, then you have missed the point here. Because everybody in the room will believe that they are the best buyer in the room. Nobody will come to an airline and expect that, oh, I have less buying power than the person next to me, so she has much lower price than me. I mean, they're not going to understand that. So I totally understand it when Charlene said people are not ready. And it goes back to this ego thing, right? Like you think that your company has the best buying power, right? But if you put it in numbers, right? Numbers never lie, right? So I can easily say that I have 20,000 20,000 travelers, right? And therefore, my buying power with a Singapore Airlines compared to someone who only has 200 travelers is very different. So put that into the algorithm, and that's how they calculate the corporate fare for me. So of course, I expect my corporate fare to be extremely different from the person next to me who only has 200 travelers. This is a very normal thing, right?
Yeah.
So, but the problem is when you put it into the algorithm, the people on the other side are not going to be able to understand, especially if they're in that position of the 200 versus the 20,000.
Yeah. So Adeline, I mean,
Could
sorry.
I just jump in though? Let me qualify one thing. Having different fares because you're a different type of flyer, or because you have different volumes, or because your cost of acquisition is different, I think that's fair game. It's just different when you're profiling on personalized characteristics. Right? If I'm distributing my fares through a particular channel that costs me 0, for example, my own site, it makes sense for me to be able to offer a slightly better price than compared to someone coming through another channel that actually has a cost for me, right? And the same is true when you're dealing with volumes, right? But it's not exactly the same when you're profiling because someone has a certain kind of behavior, or because they're tall or short, or have a different hair color. That's sort of what I'm trying to define there and make a separation on.
Okay. All right. So it just got way more complicated than I expected. And Adeline, I think that your life is going to get even more complicated because right now, okay, WiT has been around 20 years. We saw massive disruption in leisure travel, right? So online travel grew from 17 or 11 to now 67, right? This is the period of corporate travel disruption. So you're going to see, you are seeing a lot more new players coming in and all that. So are you hopeful that some of these new players will come in and simplify things for you? And if so, have you met any of the new players? Can you name some of the new players that you think might deliver you out of this complex land?
Well, definitely there are a lot of new players, but I realized that many of the new players are extremely focused mainly on the customer experience. So what is the front end? What is the traveler experiencing? There is actually untouched territory and very needed for this industry, which is actually the back end systems, right? But a lot of people do not want to touch it because it's the world of the GDSs, right? And you're going up against a lot of big players. Now, the problem is I'm also talking about back-end systems where we say, how do you make invoicing easier for everyone, right? Because this continues to be a problem. The other thing that is, I feel, still missing in this world of travel is today many people are actually traveling to events, right? So the meetings and events world together with the travel world. And for me, I look after both categories. So I have not found a solution online, like an online booking tool, that can allow me to book groups. There are no airlines either that today their systems are not open in a way to consumers to book. I want to book a family trip. I have 21 people in my family. Can I just go on and get group fares? No, I have to go through an agency. So you see, this is the untapped potential, but who is brave enough to go into this space? I have not seen anyone yet that's able to deliver on that. So I think that is still a big open opportunity where it's concerned.
Wow,
Yeah.
and that's a challenge for everyone in this room then. Philip, maybe that's your new startup.
Group bookings is really hard. I think a couple of companies tried to do it, and the problem is, first of all, it's interesting because they capped it at 9, which for those of you who trained themselves on a GDS terminal know that the availability is for 9. The reason is to save space on the digits at the time. So you cannot book more than 9 people on a single booking. The second piece is if travel is infrequent, group travel is even more infrequent. How many weddings can you attend? How many events can you go to in a year? So while the problem is miserable for you, I guess, as travel management company, the truth is, for any startup going after this, it's probably going to be a car crash. So definitely I'm not doing that, for sure. I'll stay with data.
Okay, so Kelvin, I mean, also we are seeing OTAs actively entering the space, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you got Trip now with TripBiz. I mean, Booking is heavily in it. I mean, everyone, Agoda, and so they're going after the huge SME market, right? Maybe not your sector, but SME. What value do you think OTAs will bring to this space? I mean, will it make it better for the customer? Lisa, feel free to jump in too.
I think going back to what Adeline was saying earlier, OTAs being in the front end, right, they can offer a good user experience. People are used to booking flights through there. There's more information, and people will generally think it's easier than booking through a corporate tool, mostly due to all the restrictions that exist in a corporate tool. What people, and don't get me wrong, there's a huge opportunity there, actually, for unmanaged corporate travel, right? But not managed corporate travel. Going back to your point earlier, everything works fantastically well. Everyone says, why isn't the price of this fare cheaper when I'm booking for traveling with my company? But then, you know, if you book through an OTA, they're not going to be responsible for duty of care and getting you back home. So what you're effectively paying when you're, you know, purchasing a ticket through a TMC is that additional service. And you can't really directly compare the fare through an OTA and a TMC, right? And that's why we talk of unmanaged corporate travel, which is what most of the, let's say, OTAs are going after, and managed corporate travel.
Yeah, I think just to put some word on that is, you know, I think the OTA, if they go to the corporate landscape or change a little bit work, it started, I think, because if we look at the business itself, no matter OTA or even corporate travel, they essentially doing the same to provide the travel product to the customer. So in this point, the same, right? The only difference is OTA is more technical and another is more services, right? But the OTA, what they actually different to corporate travel is they have more broader, I can say, flight coverage compared to the GDS coverage at the moment. And also OTA have more, you know, digital capability to adapt quickly. Right? So right now we see the OTA is expand to the corporate travel, but we do not see the opposite one, right? So this is what happened. So I think at the time going by, the OTA and will get more and more familiar with how to handle the corporate travel customers, and maybe some corporate travel players are still struggling how to figure out the key point or key factors. So that may make the thing change a little bit. So I see the huge opportunity that OTA entered in this.
Okay, all right. So huge opportunity in direct as well. I mean, Philip, 61% of global passengers booked direct in 2023. That's a figure that I got from T2RL. I'm sure that number has changed, increased. So do you see this absolutely on the upward trend?
That has been a trend for quite some time. Everyone's saying we're going direct. I think there's going to be always an opportunity for agencies to play their role. It's interesting that we're in the airline distribution panel and we're talking about OTAs, and the biggest OTAs, or the ones who survived, actually end up selling hotels. So air is really a tough business, but direct versus OTAs, that's an interesting one. I don't think it will matter. And the reason why it wouldn't matter is that if we end up having this agentic experience in the future that knows us really well, that can actually get into the back end through solutions like AeroHub, for example, does it matter whether you booked on airline.com versus through an agency versus through a TMC? For the consumer at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to matter. So I think it might go up a little bit more in terms of percentage points, but I don't think it's going to go away in terms of like OTA bookings or TMC bookings overall.
Okay, and maybe it's very important that you actually mentioned the back end. For the consumer, it might not matter where they purchase from in the future, but they're still going to continue purchasing through multiple places, including OTAs, so long as the back end continues to carry inefficiencies or different commercial policies. So long as there's a pricing differential in the different channels, there will still continue to remain both direct, indirect, and other means.
So question back to you then, and sorry, I'm going back to this. Does it really matter? The number that always surprised me at Skyscanner was that 97% of people clicked on the first result. That was the cheapest, and it was insane. 16-hour layover to save $5. That makes no sense in any reasonable world. So are we really talking about the prices are kind of converging? I mean, the difference is not like 100 versus 900. The difference is like 120 versus 123. Like Starbucks, you don't even get half a coffee now for this kind of amount. So do you think the price is going to be still the driver saying, okay, that inefficiency, I'm going to find those $5 somewhere else? Does it even matter?
It matters less than what it used to. So even for Skyscanner, first click was like 90-something% of all clickouts, but then people started, Skyscanner had introduced the quality ratings, so it actually went down. Still the highest for the top result, but 80-something% or even slightly less, right? But the point is that in an agentic world, as you mentioned, right, it doesn't matter, right? Because you just have an agent that retrieves the pricing for you, right? And it might just be $1 or $2. So unless there's something terribly bad that you've had as past experience, you just click what gives you the best price, provided there's no huge red flags, right?
All right, so we talked about, the untapped opportunity, right? Adeline brought up the issue of group travel, managed group travel, and also backend. That seems to be a big untapped opportunity.
And they actually brought up one good point here, right?
Yeah.
At the point of time when I look at the Skyscanner, why did I pick the lowest one, even though it's a 16-hour flight, right? So maybe the untapped opportunity is for these OTAs is how do you become an agentic AI consultant to the person that's interacting with this screen? Help them to understand that normally the flight only takes 2 hours. So yes, $3 cheaper, but you'll have to fly, another X number of hours, right? Like, is there going to be some AI, something genie that pops up and says, hey, maybe you want to reconsider which you choose, right? And then maybe one that comes up and says, the safety rating for this airline is what, Like, really start putting messages out there that people can then make the right choice. Like, a lot of people ask me, why am I still in this category segment of travel, right? I came from an airline background, Japan Airlines. I will tell you that until today, I'm of the mindset that cost is never the most important. The most important thing with flying is always safety. So duty of care, whether I'm in my role now or if I'm a responsible traveler on the road, it's always about safety. There should be nothing else than health and safety, right? And everything else should really take second position to those two things. Yeah.
So why does everyone then sell on price?
Precisely, because there's not enough information coming up, at the point of you purchasing that ticket, because it becomes a very you and the screen, right? And if you don't know what you don't know. So my point is, having a kind of technology that actually is able to give you that. I mean, somebody told me the other day that everybody just believes everything they see off the internet, right? And that's the problem. Like, there's a lot of false information, right? So, but how do you make sure that there's integrity, right? When you go with booking tools and they're actually telling you information that, as a layman, you don't know.
X% chance of crash?
Yeah,
Or?
yeah. So why not then a price times a risk index or a safety index?
Price of coffee at the airport where you have a layover.
I think despite the loss of life, which we had a terrible incident this year on June 12th, as you folks know, I think airlines continue to be one of the safest modes of transportation. So to be honest with you, I see your point in terms of the safety rating, but I don't think it will diverge so much for many individuals. And we have to respect what airlines as an industry have done to keep us safe in the sky. Like 4.4 billion people fly every year. That is incredible. And like, while it's unimaginable the loss of life that occasionally happens and it hurts a lot, it's still one of the safest modes of transportation. So let's throw it out there. It's an airline distribution panel, but
Well said,
great
well
work
said.
by the airlines on this one.
Okay, so let's continue. Let's go to the audience now. Okay, and we're gonna ask the audience: Will we ever move towards a world where flights will be sold like ride sharing, instant, transparent, and personalized? So, what's your answer, guys? Yes or never?
I hope not. I mean, that's a little bit too much, and they'll try to sell me a meal in the middle of it, and then something else. I don't know.
I think yes.
Yeah? Okay, that was one of the crazy idea that came out from yesterday's travel hack was, a Grab Air, for example, right? So you see, we have 40% say yes, maybe by 2045. Oh no, it's going down.
Wow.
Even as I speak. Are there any startups, Lisa, that have made you sit up? Because you're with ennea, you watch the startup ecosystem. Anybody that has stood up and that Adeline should know about?
I'll answer slightly differently.
Why?
I don't think it's about any one particular startup or the name of a startup. I think this is a very special space. I mean, everyone probably thinks that about what they're active in, but it's really about the network effect. It's not about technology, right? It's always been about the network effect in this industry, which really means that what makes you stand out is really a lot of hard work and perseverance, rather than a cool idea and something that's terribly new that no one has ever thought about before. This is a time of great opportunity where effectively we're seeing a lot of distribution move away from the GDSs, which have been the paradigm for 30, 40
60,
plus
60.
57, I think I heard the number earlier. Yeah.
1953, IBM gets on a flight with American Airlines. Sabre,
Okay,
Mother
okay.
Sabre was born.
All right.
Exactly. And now you do have contenders, both larger companies who've
Okay,
raised
so
a lot of money,
distribution space, okay.
like either aggregators or players like Flyer, etc.
Okay.
And then you also have smaller players who are trying to get in on that, but they're still far away from getting critical mass for that to matter. So
right.
it's not sexy, but someone has to do the work.
Can any of you name one that you've come across that, other than AeroHub, your own startup, but is there one that has stood out to you and you say, well, that's interesting? Adeline, have you met anyone that has come to pitch to you that you say has promise?
So there was Spot Nana was here just now, right? Yeah. So we did look at Spot Nana, and I think we had a RFP actually on OTAs starting last year. Yeah. Spot Nana stood out in terms of being very advanced. I would say that for my region, probably can work. However, for the company as a whole, because of where they are based and where their main target audience is, we are not ready. So it always goes back to the readiness.
Okay.
Yeah, our travelers were really not ready.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kelvin, name one.
Really, I still want to, try to define what kind of the engine it looks like, really. Because the really challenge here is how we can, just call back to you, Philip, how we can establish and implement the common standard across the industry. And
Common
engage,
standard.
right?
Okay.
Engage everybody to play the game. So this is really challenging, especially globalization happens as well. But I think the turning point still takes time until the new species will come. And we are trying to, become that and trying to, define that what should be, and we are working on that.
Okay, so the poll was very equally split, actually, about Grab Air. Okay, so we're going to wrap up with rapid fire. What's one item you still pack for a trip in 20 years' time, Lisa?
Underwear.
I don't know. Okay. Philip, will travel agents make a comeback or disappear completely?
I keep saying they're going to die, but they will stay, I think, forever. Like, I don't think we're getting rid of travel agents.
Adeline, will in-flight meals be better or worse in 20 years for your travelers?
It can only get better.
It can only get better. Okay, and Kelvin, if you could time travel to 2045, where's the first place you'd go to?
Well, to be honest, I will go home and make a search where AeroHub and where we go. For the next
You
10
go
years.
home to search for where you go to. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. That's very futuristic.
Well, yeah, go home first, family. And then, yeah.
All right, please join me in thanking Lisa, Philip, Adeline, and Kelvin. Thank you. All right.
For the next 2 hours.